Welcome to Social 101. I'm your professor, Leonard Thomas, and we're going to be going over the PowerPoint slides for today. Alright, we're going to take a brief look inside the chapter. We're going to talk about how did sociology develop, how does it differ from other social sciences, who are the pioneers and what are their theoretical perspectives, and last, how does sociology help us develop a sociological imagination? The sociological imagination is a cornerstone piece for sociology. Alright, what is sociology? Sociology is a scientific study of social behavior in human groups. So if you're like me, you like to people watch, and we're looking at how do those relationships develop based on our behavior with one another. So if you're looking at a group, maybe you see body language, you see eye contact, you can differentiate between who's in a relationship, who's friends, who doesn't like who, right? And so we can tell that by the behavior of people within groups. We're also interested in looking at how our relationships influence our behavior. So let's say your mom or your friend says they don't like the shirt or the clothes that you're wearing, and so you change your outfit, right? And so that's an example of how our relationships with people influence our behavior with one another, right? And we do this lots of different ways. We're also interested in learning how did we move from a hunting and gathering society into the industrial or post-industrial society in which we live. Now again, like I mentioned earlier, the cornerstone of sociology is C. Wright Mills's sociological imagination. And what we're interested in trying to figure out is how do individual troubles that we have become social problems. So maybe you know someone during the Great Recession that lost his or her job. Now, we don't say to ourselves or to that person that they're lazy, they're stupid because they're unemployed, because we realize that it's not that individual alone who's unemployed, but we realize there are a great number of Americans who are unemployed. So we're able to tie that unemployment to an entire nation, right? So we're able to tie those to the wider society. The same for divorce, the same for teen pregnancy. These are things that we're going to get into, right? But it helps us look beyond our own kind of worldview to see a much broader sense of the world and the society in which we live. Now, we have to distinguish between sociology and different social sciences. Let's first understand what is science. Science is really a systematic observation, right? Based on rigid methodology, a rigid method taking, right? So we talk about a systematic observation. We mean that observations are done in a certain way all the time across the board. So there are two different types of sciences. The first is the natural science. So you're going to give geology, physiology, anatomy, chemistry, right? Physics. All these are natural sciences because they study nature, right? They study the earth. They're also known as maybe earth sciences versus social science. And so when we talk about social sciences, we're talking about anthropology, we're talking about psychology, we're talking about sociology, history, political science. What we're looking at is really the way that how humans on Earth interact with one another and how those interactions create change. Now, when we study sociology as a social science, again, we look at lots of different things, which is why I love sociology, because it's so diverse, right? So we're looking at people's attitudes and behaviors, but you can look at the global recession. So what's going on right now in the U.S.? How is it slowing down? How is it getting better? How does that affect the world, right? Marital problems, divorce, right? We're going to look at a lot into relationships. How do we date? How do we marry? What trends and what patterns do we see in dating and in marriage? Education is a huge deal. Is education the gateway out of poverty that it used to be? We're going to talk about that. The Virginia Tech shooting, Hurricane Katrina. How do people come together during disasters, or how do disasters cause a breakdown in society? These are things that we're going to examine in sociology as a social. Now, when we talk about sociology and common sense, we have to understand that there's a difference between scientific knowledge and common sense. One of the reasons is because people get this idea of common sense because it's been passed down, but we don't know if it's been substantiated, right? We don't know if there's evidence to prove that it is either true or not true. So, for example, I ask people and my students, do you think teen pregnancy is increasing or decreasing? And common sense tells them that teen pregnancy is increasing because they see it on the TV. They read about it. I ask students, do you think more marriages end in divorce? And everybody says, oh yes, right? The divorce rate is going up and up and up. It's getting higher. Or I ask them, is crime getting worse? And they look at me and I say, of course crime's getting worse. But if you look at the specific data, what you'll see is that across the board, the teen pregnancy is decreasing. Less women are having children in their teens, and it's been that way since 1991. Or if I ask them about the divorce rate, what they don't believe, again, is that the divorce rate has actually decreased since 2002. It still hovers around 50%, but again, it's on the downward trend. Finally, I asked my students, do you think crime is getting better or getting worse? And they always say it's getting worse. But according to the FBI, what we know is that there's been a 5-year downward trend in crime. But these aren't things that you hear about. Common sense would tell you the opposite. But when you look at scientific, sociological data, you see the reverse. So we have to be careful what's the difference between common sense and sociology. So let's talk about theory, because a lot of sociology is theoretical, right? And I think we all make theories from time to time, but just to give you a definition, theory is basically a statement trying to explain why, right? So why something happens. So let's say, for example, you take the bus, and every day your bus picks you up on the way to work at 9 o'clock, right? But lately your bus has been getting there at 10 o'clock, right? So now you want to explain why. And you create a theory why that happens. Maybe there's construction going down the road, and you're guessing that's the reason, right? An educated guess is what's called a hypothesis, right? But again, you're starting to explain the problem of the bus coming late to you. Now, the way you give power to your theory is by so you go down the road and you wait there at the construction site to see if your bus, gets stuck in traffic and then has to get over another lane and then get back in the lane and then pick you up. And that's the reason why it's an hour late, right? If your theory has proven to be true, right, now your theory has power. But again, theories come in all different shapes and sizes. So we have different philosophers that help develop what sociology is. Now, one thing you need to understand is that sociology came out of Europe in the 19th century. So a lot of the people that you're going to hear about from me today are actually European thinkers. Several European social theorists made long-standing contributions to the development of sociology and to sociological theory. Augustus Comte coined the term sociology as one of the first to suggest an application of scientific principles to study human behavior. Harriet Martineau, an English sociologist, is known both for her translations of Comte's writings as well as her original studies of the customs and social practices of Britain and the U.S. Martineau's pioneering efforts at social research would most likely have landed her the title of founder of sociology had it not been for her gender. One of the most controversial theorists of the 19th century was Herbert Spencer. Drawing on the ideas of Charles Darwin, Spencer argued that, like animals, humans have varying levels of social fitness, and those who are the most fit will thrive, while those who are the less fit will struggle and eventually die out. His theories appealed to many throughout Britain and the United States, especially the powerful who had vested interest in pioneering the status quo. Émile Durkheim was one of the first individuals to hold a professional appointment with the title of sociologist. Durkheim was interested in the processes and consequences of modernization. According to Durkheim, the modernization of society may lead to a condition known as anomie, or normlessness. Anomie is experienced when social norms lose their effectiveness as instruments of control. The inability of modern societies to regulate or control behavior may lead to higher levels of deviance, including suicide. Indeed, Durkheim's most well-known work is the publication Suicide, which examines the social patterns underlying the suicide rates. Considered a sociological giant, Max Weber was well-versed in many subject areas, including history, law, and religion. Weber made several contributions to the field of sociology, including the concept of Verstehen, the German word for understanding or insight. Weber argued that sociological phenomena cannot be understood using objective criteria only. Rather, sociologists must understand the subjective meanings human actors attached to their actions and to things around them. Weber is also known for a concept known as ideal type. An ideal type is a construct based on pure characteristics. Ideal types are used in sociology for understanding, describing, and comparing. Like Spencer, Karl Marx is one of the most controversial figures in sociology, although for different reasons. Marx was highly critical of existing social institutions and their tendency to create and maintain the status quo. He was especially outspoken on the matter of worker exploitation by the bourgeoisie, or the owners. Together with his friend and colleague Friedrich Engels, Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto, a brief but compelling document urging the working class, or proletariat, to overthrow the ruling class, the bourgeoisie. Because of his subversive writings, endorsement of major social change, and involvement with underground organizations, Marx was eventually exiled from Germany. His work, however, continues to have an enormous influence on sociological research and theory even to this day. Ironically, Marx and Spencer are buried next to each other in London's Highgate Cemetery. A number of contemporary social theorists, many from the U.S., have also made contributions to the field of sociology. W.B. Du Bois, one of the founders of the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored Persons, used sociological research to study urban life for black and white Americans in hopes that his studies would be used to assist in the struggle for racial equality. Du Bois stressed that empowerment comes through knowledge, and he was a champion of equal access to higher education. Like Marx, Du Bois encountered a number of resistance from the academy due to political and activist natures of his writings. Charles Horton Cooley, a microsociologist, preferred to look at smaller units, including face-to-face groups such as dyads, two-person groups. Cooley's work contributed immensely to our understanding of group dynamics, particularly as they relate to group size. Jane Addams practiced applied sociology, meaning that she combined intellectual rigor with political activism. She is known for the establishment of the Hull House in Chicago, a settlement for poor women. She also was a founding person of WIC, Women, Infant, and Children. Addams was involved in a number of social causes, including the rights of women, children, and immigrants. It was largely out of the work and ideas of Addams that the field of social work emerged. Robert Merton, recently a sociologist at Columbia University, proposed one of the most popular and frequently cited explanations for deviant behavior. According to Merton, deviant behaviors are a result of breakdowns or dysfunctions in the social structure. When social norms advocate a certain lifestyle but simultaneously prevent some from achieving that lifestyle, deviance and crime is likely to result. Macrosociology looks at sociology on a global scale, where microsociology again focuses on smaller groups. Finally, Pierre Bourdieu, a sociologist from France, developed the concept of cultural capital. In addition to material assets, capital may take the form of cultural assets, including such things as family background, occupational prestige, and access to important informal networks. The dominant class possesses more cultural capital, which in turn ensures that their children will possess more, thereby reproducing the class structure. When we talk about social capital, again, we're looking at how much are your friends worth. So if you have friends that have a lot of money and a lot of access, then you have higher social capital than other friends. Social capital can also be discussed in terms of IOUs, right? So if you have a friend and you need a ride, and you ask your friend, he says no, and you can say, well, you owe me, then you have social capital. All right, now you can see all the contributors to sociology. The functionist perspective views society like a living organism, or I like to say a jigsaw puzzle, in which each part contributes to its overall survival or has its place. This perspective was developed primarily by Talcott Parsons, a sociologist at Harvard University. According to this view, any aspect of society which persists over time does so because it serves some purpose and in some way contributes to its livelihood. Even something such as a crime or poverty may persist so long as it serves some purpose or functions. That's what's known as a manifest function, right? It's what's supposed to happen. For functionalists, the parts of society normally work together towards a common goal. So a manifest function of, let's say, going to JCTC is going to get your degree. But a latent function of education is typically finding your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, your wife, or your partner, right? So JCTC doesn't say, hey, come to college and, find your boo, right, or your bae, right? No, it just says come to get your education. It's a manifest function. The fact that you find your boo or your bae is your latent function. Boo or bae is just a term of endearment for people. A dysfunction, again, would be going against it. So a dysfunction of coming to college would be kicking you out for plagiarism, right? So that's a dysfunction of college, or the idea that, maybe education is getting so expensive that people can't even go to college anymore. That's a dysfunction of the educational system. The conflict theory, on the other hand, views parts of society as at odds with another. From the conflict perspective, groups in society are constantly engaged in a power struggle over scarce, highly valued resources. Dominant groups wishing to maintain their positions of power create ideologies and institutions which serve to protect the status quo. Karl Marx, a key figure in the conflict perspective, viewed conflict, rather than consensus, as the primary characteristic of all human societies. Furthermore, it was his belief that it was capitalism which was primarily responsible for the exploitation of the working class. Derived from the conflict perspective, the feminist perspective, or feminist theory, views gender as a primary sorting device in all societies. Not only are women and men separated, they are also stratified, which means they're ranked and evaluated. Patriarchy, like other forms of social and economic dominance, is maintained through the presence of ideologies and institutional arrangements. Finally, the interactionist perspective is concerned with everyday forms of interaction, including symbols, language, and nonverbal communication. George Herbert Mead, an American sociologist and philosopher, first developed interaction in the United States and is regarded as a founder of this perspective. It should be noted that sociologists make use of all perspectives since each offers a unique insight into the characteristics of social behavior. Irving Goffman looked at the dramaturgical approach, or how people really perform or act as actors. Sometimes people will ask me which theory is the best. And I tell my students that theory is like sunglasses. You have different color sunglasses. You have black sunglasses, gray, red, blue. And really, choosing the right pair of sunglasses depends on, how you feel that day. The same thing goes for sociology. However you view the world, you're going to look at it from a different sociological lens, right? So you may put on, the sunglasses that allow you to look through from a functional standpoint, or from a conflict standpoint, or an interaction standpoint. I mean, each pair of sunglasses is the same, and each theory is really the same, but it's really whichever one you want to use. Now you can see the differences with each functionalist, conflict, and interactionist theory. Use these to help you on the exam and on your and in the class. All right. Applied sociology involves use of sociological findings or insight with specific intent on yielding practical applications for persons or society. Clinical sociology is dedicated to altering social relationships or restructuring social institutions. Both applied and clinical sociology can be contrasted with basic or pure sociology, which seeks to build a knowledge base of fundamental aspects of social phenomena. In other words, pure sociologists pursue knowledge for knowledge's sake. All right. So one of the big things about sociology is sociology really focuses on social inequality. And what we're really looking at is how people have different access or amounts of wealth, prestige, and power. And when we talk about sociology, we're looking at really the word power. So who has more power, who has less power? And sociology typically fights for the oppressed in society, however that may be. Again, sociology, we're looking at oppressed racial groups, gender groups, religious groups. Again, trying to understand how people come together and interact with each other based on different races, genders, and religions. And again, if you're thinking about sociology as fighting for the oppressed or wanting to emancipate people or free people from social problems, again, sociology is very concerned with social problems. Now, it is my desire in life that everybody become a sociologist. Again, what I want to show you is that there are lots of different careers in sociology. You can choose from whatever career that you want. Again, you've seen and you know before it's very diverse. People go into sociology for the undergraduate degree. You can go to law school, you can go to medical school, go into teaching. Of course, a lot of people who do sociology end up going into some kind of social work. Again, you can see that more and more people are getting their degrees in sociology. Again, sociology is a growing degree, but most people that get their degrees in sociology are women nowadays versus men. It flipped. Right? And again, and what can you do with a sociology degree? You can see now if you do major in sociology, there are lots of different job opportunities that exist for you.